Hello and welcome back to the channel. Also, welcome to the studio in late fall, early winter. It's very dark. I do have a ring light, both of the lamps on. I do want to get another lamp. It's really only going to be this bad for filming my face, but honestly, it's very cozy. It's super rainy out. Oh, snow? Hail? It might actually be snowing outside. So, anyway, a long time no see, at least that's how it feels to me. It's been a while since I sat down to film a new video. But today, I feel like to just ease into it, we can do a video that I've been wanting to do for quite a while, which is a tour of my main watercolor palette. These are all colors that I've selected for my personal, daily use palette. I have recently revamped it, reorganized it to make it as practical as possible. This is not the ultimate form of my palette. Obviously, it will evolve as my art evolves, but also in the immediate future, I'd love to get an even bigger palette because I love color. And so I'd love to be able to fit even more colors in here, or even just have more space to put tubes of watercolor, because I do have a couple of tubes in here because I couldn't quite fit more pans in this palette. But I'm also going to be giving it to you in its full, dirty, used glory, but I don't think you'll mind. I think it's kind of aesthetic in its own way. So let's get into it. Alright, I have such a bad habit of trying to sit on my feet, and I sit on only wooden chairs and stools. It's not great for my ankles. Okay, so here we have the palette and a shitty brush so that I don't feel bad about kind of abusing it while we swatch these. We're going to take the tubes out and give them a little spritz. A lot of spritz, but And we're just going to swatch them in my sketchbook, which is really basically done, and I'll walk you through all of the colors and kind of explain what I like about them. There's lots of different brands in here. So as you can see, we've got a fairly traditional layout. I do, at least for this kind of palette, prefer the traditional rainbow layout. For my Ghibli paints, I followed Miyazaki's layout as best as I could guess to what it was, but that palette has a very different shape than this one, so I just went with the traditional rainbow. And we have a lot of colors. The thing that's non-traditional about my palette is the color selection. We've got a lot of colors, and it doesn't really fall into... There are a couple of different traditional watercolor palettes, right, that a lot of people will use. Landscape artists will have, their own palette. I really hope you can hear the rain, it's gorgeous. But landscape artists will have, generally a similar palette a lot of the time, or botanical artists will favor vivid colors without much granulation, blah blah blah, and mine doesn't really fit into any of those. I have a real love of color. I want to have access to as many different colors as possible. I love vivid colors and muted colors and granulating colors and smooth colors. It really just depends on the effect I'm going for. So I like to have a ton of paints, but if you have a much more niched down style or niched down approach to color, if you find that you use only a few colors, this might not be the kind of palette that you need. I also have this little palette, and even this is way more than enough colors for a basic palette. It has quite a few reds. It has two very similar pinky magenta tones. There aren't really a lot of greens, and there are some shimmer colors. So even this is kind of an excessive palette if you're a bit of a minimalist. If you find having lots of colors to be distracting or paralyzing, something like this or even smaller might be better for you. You might want full pan so you have lots of paint, but just in terms of color range. Not everyone needs or even benefits from a large palette. I personally do, as well as being a total color nerd. I'm gonna put this up here so that I can actually reach this other side. So this is Isaro Yellow from Isaro Paints. which are really nice paints. It's a little like a Hansa yellow or a cadmium yellow lemon. In fact, it might be a cadmium yellow lemon. This next one is Gamboge Hue by Grumbacher Academy. It's a nice, very warm yellow, quite a bit like Indian yellow. I have some Indian yellow by Schminke, which is stunning, beautiful, lovely, but it's a half pan, which is not my preferred pan size, and Schminke is really hard to reactivate in pans. Just in my experience, their pans are very hard to reactivate, and it can be a little irritating. This is Yellow Ochre. Whoops. This is Yellow Ochre. Quite frankly, I don't remember what brand it is. It's either Holbeine or Isaro, but I think it's Holbeine. Let me clean that up. But Yellow Ochre was and still is one of my absolute favorite yellows for mixing. I think it's just absolutely stunning. It's bright without being overwhelming. And so for the majority of yellow cases, I honestly think that this is one of the best yellows you can use. Just because if you're not going for a really bright yellow, if you're going for a more balanced painting, a lot of these really bright ones can really overwhelm things. And so it doesn't do that. This is Alizarin Orange by Grumbacher Academy. And I did a video swatching my new Grumbacher Academy colors and really putting them through their paces by making a master's study. I'll try to remember to link it below or something. But I really like this orange because it's very transparent, but it's not too vibrant. I have the colors to mix a really vibrant, intense orange. I don't need a really vibrant, intense orange, but a more natural, more transparent orange is very valuable to me. So I really love this color. It's beautiful. It's really perfect for pumpkins or autumn foliage, or if you use it in layering, it can make some really magnificent like orange hair. It's just a wonderful, wonderful color. This is another favorite of mine. This is Mummy Red by Roman Szmal. I don't know if it's meant to imitate mummy brown, a historical pigment actually made from ground up mummies, which is just grossly unethical, but I don't know if it's meant to replicate that, or if the name is unrelated, but it is a really beautiful, transparent, orangey brown. It's not a super overpowering color. It's really sheer, really light, and sometimes this is just exactly what you need for making a lighter brown skin tone, you know? And it's not too granulating, but it's just a little bit of texture. It's quite nice. This is Isaro Scarlett. It's a cadmium red, and I love a really strong, bright red. Really, really intense reds are just about my only exception for cadmium colors because I just don't like them very much. But for reds, I think it's worth it. And this red is very orange leaning. It's very, very beautiful, and just super intense. And you'll see I have quite a few reds in this palette. This is Isaro Cadmium Red Dark, and you can see that this is a stunning, dark, very bloody color, for lack of a better term. I really love this color. I think it's just so beautiful. And then if you mix this color with Ultramarine, it's just gorgeous. I'll show you some of my favorite color mixes with this palette when we're done swatching, because this one is just a fantastic mixer. It really just does something else to its mixes. This is Grumbacher Academy Geranium Lake, and it's a very interesting red because, again, usually with reds like this, they're cadmium reds, and so they're quite opaque, but this one is much more transparent, and it has a very lovely richness to it that's hard to achieve with a very opaque paint. It's just wonderfully glowy, and I do think it would work beautifully for botanicals. It really makes me think of like red tulips, and I haven't had time to really explore it in my work, but I'm really excited to because I do think that it has the potential to make some really incredible stuff. This is Azo Red from Roman Szmal. This has been my favorite red for quite a while, and there's a dent in it, but I've still got quite a bit left. And it is a very, I'll try and water down just a little bit so you can kind of see there. It's a very pink leaning red. It's still definitely red, but it has much more of a pink hue. And if you do not want, if you're looking for a really, really minimal palette, like 3 colors, you do not want an orange red, because a pink red will make perfectly nice oranges, but an orange red will make terrible purples. It will make horrible purples. So if you want nice, vibrant purples, or decently vibrant purples, decently good oranges, you really want a pink-hued red. It will be much more flexible if you don't want to go with the cyan, yellow, magenta route. So this one's great for that. It's super intense and super vibrant in person. It definitely strains the eyes if you use a lot of it, which I do. I will do huge washes of just bold, intense red with this, and it's beautiful. I really like to mix it with the Isaro Red because they make a very true red. That's not too orange, not too pink. That's very, very rich. This is Carmine by Grumbacher Academy. It's a nice, classic pink color. Very good for botanicals. It's not too intense or too vibrant. It's not like an opera rose, but the benefit is that it is a lot more light fast than an opera rose, which contains fluorescent pigments, and fluorescent pigments, neon pigments, are inherently not light fast, so there is a benefit to that, but it makes really, really beautiful purples, and it's quite similar to an alizarin crimson in its look and behavior. It's not identical by any means, but it's quite similar. This is Isaro Pink. It's definitely a favorite of mine. I have another color that's quite similar, but this is just a little bit more pink. It's a quinacridone, clearly, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful magenta. Very rich, just stunning. There's no other word for it. I love this color so much. And again, Isaro paints are lovely paints. They're quite high quality, but they come in slightly smaller tubes than most brands of expensive paints. And since they're watercolor, those tubes last forever, so they're a little bit more affordable than other paints of that caliber because they're sold in slightly smaller quantities, which is really nice. This is Roman Szmal's Potter's Pink, an absolutely indispensable color as far as I'm concerned. Just beautiful, subtle, subtle pink, slightly purple leaning, slightly earthy. I used to have a pair of jeans this exact color. They were amazing, but eventually I had to accept that they were too big for me. But it's just beautiful, highly granulating. There's really nothing like it. It is a notoriously low tinting strength color, but that doesn't mean it's a bad mixer. It makes some beautiful, subtle mixes if you're just careful. But as you can see, I like it so much that I've dug quite a deep hole in it. This is Grumbacher Academy. This is Grumbacher Academy Quinacridone Violet. And as you can see, it's very similar to Isaro Pink, but it's just more blue. I doubt this will show up on camera, but the wonderful thing about this shade is that it just looks like there's blue hiding in it. And the other thing about this color, I'm going to swatch it again with a lot more water because it really does have an effect. When you wash it out, it doesn't really wash out pink. It washes out almost gray. It's just like the faintest bit purple. And especially once it dries, it mutes down even more. And even if we add more, it will still be quite gray. Whereas if I were to water down this color or this color, we would still get a pink. We would get a pastel pink. This is just almost gray, and it's so subtle and so lovely. That is just one of my favorite colors ever. It's just so complex. And I've used it quite a bit. I used it for Violet Ocean. I still love looking at that painting so much. This is another favorite color of mine. This is Dioxazine Violet. Just a very classic, very intense, like royal purple. And it's really, really stunning. One of my absolute favorite color mixes uses this color. I like to mix it with a very blue-green or teal green to get a very beautiful, dark gray blue. It's just one of the most stunning blue colors I've ever seen, and it really is a favorite of mine for mixing. This is Ultramarine Violet by Schminke, and it's lovely. This color instantly makes me think of pansies, which are one of my favorite flowers, and I think it's so lovely. It would also make fantastic irises, especially the paler petals. This plus, these yellows, and oh, it would just be so stunning. I really love it. I don't have a lot to say about it. It's a beautiful color. This is Tundra Violet. Ooh, that's a lot of paint. This is Tundra Violet by Schminke, and it's one of their super granulating colors. I love their super granulating colors. Yes, they are convenience mixes. Yes, you can make them yourself, but there's something to be said about the reliability of a pre-made convenience color and the ideas that these can spark. I think these are very inspiring colors, and I think that if a color really inspires you, and if it helps you come up with ideas, and if it keeps your brain moving, I think it's worth it. And this is just such a lovely color. I really love to mix it into browns to make them a little less basic, a little less flat. Just a little bit of this with browns makes them really, really lovely for all kinds of stuff. And it has such a soft look that I think it works very well for brownish gray, like bird feathers or something on a hot press paper. It's really great for that. This is Lavender by Holbein, and it has a lot of white in it. I don't generally like colors with a lot of white in it, in them, but this one looks really lovely, and it makes some really fascinating mixes. So I actually added it to my main palette instead of just going to the Ghibli palette to use it. I actually decided that I needed to have it for those instances, and it's just lovely. You can see it just goes so well with all of these colors. I really love it paired with a really intense red, or with a very vibrant pink. I think that just looks amazing. And like I said, it can have a very interesting effect on colors when it's mixed. This is Cobalt Blue from my White Nights palette. That was my first palette I ever got for myself, and I'm still using it. So, watercolors are very cost effective. I left most of the colors in my Roman Szmal palette. I don't use it that much anymore, but for the blues I did bring a lot of those over because I like having a lot of options for blues so I can get the exact right effect in my mixes and on the sky, whether I want in my mixes or using it straight out of the pan, because sometimes I want granulation and sometimes I don't. And if I can avoid mixing, I like to, just because I feel like it makes the colors more intense and more vibrant. I tend to mix when I want colors to be more muted. So I did bring over a couple of blues from the Roman Szmal palette, but I really like Cobalt Blue. This is Isaro Ultramarine, a very intense ultramarine that I quite like. Most ultramarines are pretty bold, but they do vary in intensity, I find, and this is a really, really intense one, although it's not showing up quite as intense on camera, but it's very, very intense. We're getting into a paint. I'm going to be honest about what color it is in case you want it, but I don't like to talk about owning this color so much because I don't really like the brand. This is by Daniel Smith. Nothing against the quality of their paints. Their paints are fantastic in quality. I just don't really like the owner. I don't think he respects the intelligence of his customers. So this is Sodalite Genuine, allegedly. And I, quite frankly, don't believe that for a second. But they're beautiful. Their Primatech line are beautiful colors. They're really stunning, but I just you can't convince me that that's what they are. But yeah, it's a really nice mix. Very highly granulating, steely gray blue, really complex, really gorgeous, fantastic for stormy gray seaside landscapes and things like that. It has a faint glitter, which is beautiful, stunning color. I'm not going to lie and pretend it's by a different brand just because I don't personally want to support Daniel Smith. So that's what it is if you want it. It's a beautiful color. This is White Knight's Bright Blue, or maybe Cerulean. I can't quite remember which name they go for with that. It's just a classic, intense, like cyan blue. Very, very useful for mixing. I don't usually use it straight out of the pan, but it's just too useful not to have for me. Not a lot to say about it. It's not very granulating. It's very intense, and that's useful sometimes. Next up is Roman Szmal's Turquoise, a favorite of mine. I've worked quite a dent into this one. A very intense, very dark, rich teal. I find it a fantastic mixer. It goes so dark. It's great for mixing darks, but it's also so beautiful when it's watered down, just on its own. Is this Tundra, or is this... Oh shit. Definitely didn't just totally screw over my palette. We're ignoring that. This is Tundra Green. No, Forest Green. I literally just checked that. This is Forest Green, also by Schminke, super granulation color. Really, really lovely color. And like this one, which is separated so beautifully, this will separate as the video goes along. I'll add a little extra water just so it can shine. But it's a beautiful, muted green. I really, really love it. I don't use it super often, but when I do, I'm very grateful to have it because it's just beautiful. This is Grumbacher Academy Emerald, and it's beautiful. Emerald green in watercolors are meant to replicate historical emerald green, also known as Scheele's green or Paris green. So that was a color that was very famously made with arsenic, very, very poisonous. So obviously we don't sell that anymore, but this is quite close. Personally, I think it might be slightly too yellow, but I think that's a personal thing. It came in lots of different colors. It feels like compared to the most common examples of an intense Scheele's green, this is just a little bit yellow, but if you add just a tiny bit of this or this, you will get much, much closer to what I personally think Scheele's green looks like. This is Peryline Green by Roman Szmal. It might be Peryline Green Dark, but it might not. I just can't remember. They're quite similar. But this is another color that's just fantastically useful for mixing your own darks, for mixing chromatic blacks, because it's just so intense. But it just gives so much more richness than using an actual black. It's not particularly granulating, and it's just so, so beautiful. It's another color that's just like really fantastic for stormy gray landscapes. If you live in like the Pacific Northwest, this will be a really fantastic color for you if you do landscapes. It would just be so beautiful. I use it because I like to have a lot of really dark colors, but this is Green Earth by Grumbacher Academy. It's a really lovely, just very gentle kind of celadon green. It's not too intense. It's easily like overwhelmed. It doesn't have a high tinting strength, but it's really beautiful. And I haven't used it very much yet because it is a newer addition to my palette, but I do really want to find something to do with this because it's really beautiful. And it's just a very subtly granulating color that's just very nice. If you like to use a lot of colors straight out of the pan, it can be quite nice to have these more complicated, lower tinting strength colors because they're just lovely. Now we're getting on to a favorite of mine. This is Green Gold by M-Gram, I think. Pretty sure it's M-Gram, but I can get names confused. That one brand that puts so much honey in their paints that they never dry. But this has been a favorite in my palette since I started painting. I have loved this color. It washes out into such a glowy, faint green, and it just looks amazing, especially as an underpainting for foliage. This is just the most beautiful color. I'm going to swatch it again a little bit lighter so you can see it just really glows. It's like a rich highlighter yellow, for lack of a better term. And it's just so stunning. It's a fantastic mixer. It's good for so many things. And then after this, we're getting into the neutrals of the palette. There aren't that many, but there are a few. So This is Geothite, if I'm pronouncing that right, Geothite Genuine by Roman Szmal. And this exhibits all of the characteristics you would expect from a genuine stone paint. It's not too intense. It has a lower tinting strength, although this one is fairly intense. It's grainy, and the genuine stone pigments from Roman Szmal, they're very tacky. They can take quite a while to dry, and compared to other Roman Szmal paints, they can be kind of hard to re-wet. That's not saying much. Roman Szmal paints are super easy to re-wet, so they're still quite easy. And they can take quite a while to dry because of how much binder you need to add to these paints in order to get them to work and in order to stop them from hardening down into a little hockey puck that you can never use again. I have others of their colors, but this is the only one that went straight into the main palette because I was running out of room, and I find this very highly granulating, very complex brown to be very, very useful. It's great for adding texture to like bark and ground and whatever. It just amps up the granulation of any brown you mix it with. And it adds fantastic age spots to like leaves and stuff. If you mix it in with like an orange and a green and a little bit of this, you'll get perfect autumn leaves every time. It's just fantastic. This is Payne's Gray by Grumbacher Academy. Every brand will have their own mix of Payne's Gray. That'll be slightly different. This one is quite dark and quite green, and I like it a lot. I think it's really, really gorgeous. My Payne's Gray from Holbein is much bluer and has a lot more white in it, so it doesn't get quite as dark, but I really like this darker one because it's just much more flexible to me. This is a color I don't use a lot, but when I do, I'm so grateful to have it. This is Caput Mortem by Roman Szmal, and it's being a little stubborn about re-wetting, but it's a very opaque, very dark burgundy brown, and it's just so rich and intense and interesting as a brown. Compared to your traditional browns, it's just so much more complex of a color. It just has so much red in it, and it's obviously it can granulate, but it's much less granulating than a lot of those earth browns that you would normally see. And then I don't remember exactly which ones these are, but I'm going to do my best guess. I know that they're by Holbein, so I think this is Burnt Sienna by Holbein, and I'm pretty sure this is the Burnt Umber by Holbein, and I wanted specifically the Holbein Burnt Umber and Burnt Sienna because I love Burnt Umber and Burnt Sienna, but they normally granulate a lot, and a main characteristic of Holbein watercolors is that they don't granulate very much. They lay down a lot smoother because that's much more appealing to the Japanese market. And these are such fantastic portrait colors. They just make such beautiful skin tone mixes, but I like my skin tones in my paintings to be really, really smooth, and so I avoid using them. But now that I have the Holbein ones, I think these will be actually quite useful for that because they will lay down so much nicer and so much smoother for portraits. So that's a huge benefit to Holbein paints. If you've been wanting to use the classic earth tones for skin tones and not have them granulate too much, Holbein is a fantastic brand for that. The last few colors in the palette are in tubes, and they are more Schminke super granulation colors. We've got Desert Green, Desert Yellow, and Shire Olive, and these are just my favorites of those sets. I have the Desert set and the Shire set, and I think they're so gorgeous. So first, let's do Shire Olive. It's a really nice green with just a little bit of a blue granulation. At least that's how it looks to me. And it's not too intense, it's pretty subtle, but it's really, really lovely. Desert Yellow is a pretty yellow ochre adjacent color. It's a little more muted, a little less warm, but obviously more granulating, because despite yellow ochre being a granulating color, it's not that granulating. It does lay down pretty smooth. It granulates more in mixes, especially if you mix it with like Ultramarine. That's a nice complicated color mix, or complicated looking color mix. that granulates quite a lot, but really it needs the help of other colors. So yeah, it's like a brownish yellow, and it separates, and it's really quite nice. Not too complicated, good for the more yellow autumn foliage, or, you know, dead, like yellowy grass or stuff like that. And then this one is my favorite. It's Desert Green, and this one granulates instantaneously. I get the feeling that the green is much, much lighter than the red. The red sinks to the bottom almost instantly, and you get this red-green separation that is just so, so beautiful. And I love this one so much. These two I keep around because they're lovely and they're useful and they're wonderful, but this one's just an absolute favorite of mine. I genuinely can't get enough of it. I love it so much. It's just so beautiful. I'm gonna let all of these dry and then we'll go over them so we can see how they look when they're actually dry, because obviously there will be a big color shift between wet and dry. But yeah, so we'll get back to that in just a minute. It's gotten a little chilly in here since I was recording. Wow, okay. I left this for so long. This is still wet. I should have turned the heat on while I was out of the room. Alright, well, aside from the ultramarine, we can now see what these colors look like dry. So we can see that there's some lovely granulation here. The forest green is a much less intense separation than this one. The tundra violet, you can see that the potter's pink is just granulating so much. It's so beautiful. You can see the beautiful grayness of this color. And yeah, this is my palette. So you can see it is like a full rainbow from yellow, you know, through pinks, purples, blues, greens, whatever. But a lot of these are not the most traditional colors to include in your watercolor rainbow. So, and then of course we've got the neutrals with my beloved desert green. Oh my god, it's so pretty. I'm actually going to zoom in and show you some of these colors because it's just so good. I love that. And there's all this texture. You can see these are much more delicate in their separation, but it's so pretty, and it's such a springtime sort of green. And then all of the colors, and you can see how flat and bold these cadmium reds are, and then these are a little bit deeper. So we're going to do a little bit of mixing, and I'm just going to show you my absolute favorite mixes. We can't do all of them, but so you can see a little bit of how flexible this palette can really be, although it's obviously got all of my bases covered, really. So let's see, I talked about a couple. So if we take this purple, I'm going to use a little bit of this dark green and a little bit of the teal because I don't have like a true blue-green, really. I have this, which is not particularly yellow, and then I have teal, so I kind of want to get something halfway between those two so it's not too blue already. Yeah, you can kind of see that. And then you see, if you mix them, you get this really stunning blue. I'm going to add a little bit more purple. Yeah, there we go. You get this really stunning gray blue, and it's just really lovely. Not really granulating at all. It's just so pretty. I really, really love that. And then the other mix I wanted to show you, because I just remembered, Cadmium Red Dark. I wanted to show you Isaro Cadmium Red Dark mixed with Ultramarine. This is a very granulating, separating mixture. Wow, that was a lot of blue. Okay, there we go. That's a little bit more balanced. Yeah, I'm going to run out of space very quickly. But if we just add in some more water so that it can pool and separate, you will eventually see some very interesting color separation, although, you know, honestly, who knows, because this is not watercolor paper, but this ones have worked pretty well. So, emerald green, I like it with just a tiny bit, yeah, just a tiny bit of teal added to it, because that's just so glowy. And I don't know, it's a really subtle difference, but this is just so stunning next to that. I really love green gold mixed with ultramarine. I really love that separation. So if we get them right, also it's just a beautiful set of colors to pair with each other. But you can see you get a green very easily because it's such a green yellow. And then the separation is just really lovely. It's very oceany. It's quite nice. I wanted to show you Potter's Pink in a mix because this is another really fascinating one for mixing. So I like to mix Potter's Pink and like Cobalt Blue. That's a favorite of mine. Although literally any light granulating color mixed with Potter's Pink will be so pretty. So we get this nice gray lavender, and if we kind of let that pool and separate, it can do its interesting thing. I should really mop up some of this. This is a lot of paint. Also wanted to show a nice orange. This is the Azo Red, so it's a very intense red, but it's not too opaque. And it's a little bit pink. And then if we take our warm yellow, it makes a very nice orange. And that's part of why I only have like one real orange in this whole palette, is because it's just so easy to mix good oranges, vibrant to muted oranges, when you have, you know, a good range of reds. So it's for the most part not necessary, but I do like how just perfectly balanced this one is as like a muted vibrant orange. Like it's so orange, but it's just that hint away from being vibrant. And then if I mix this, which is the Isaro Red, with this one, we get a subtly different orange. And so on and so forth with all of the reds. And if I were to mix these with my more lemony yellow, we would again get different oranges. So the difference between these is obviously going to be much more intense in person than on camera. I can definitely see the difference. It's a little bit dirty, for lack of a better term, whereas these are brighter. But I will admit it's not super obvious on camera, so if you can't see it, that's fine. And then the last one I wanted to show is my favorite. This used to be my favorite little trio of colors. So it's turquoise, a bright, very pink-toned red. That's the Azo Red. Yellow ochre. This was my favorite palette for such a long time, because if you have a really pink red, a really, really blue green, like this teal, will give you an indigo color. And you can adjust this, you know, depending on how pink your red is and how blue your teal is, you can get something that is very, very purple. And it makes such a nice dark. It's beautiful. And then if you take brownish yellow, like yellow ochre, and then you take a pink, a very pinkish red, this peachy color makes a really lovely pale skin tone. And I think this would work very well for any very pale skin tone because you could adjust it quite easily. I don't know how well it would work for a darker skin tone because back when I was doing this, I was mostly painting lighter skin tones. So I don't know exactly, well, you can't see that at all, but I don't know exactly how well it would work for that, but I do think it would probably work okay. And it's just an interesting alternative trio. You can do magenta, cyan, and yellow, right? Or you can do what we were told in kindergarten, which was absolutely wrong, but you can do what you were told in kindergarten, which is red, ultramarine, and this yellow, right? This is very like primary school, primary colors. You could do cyan, magenta, yellow. And this is kind of like halfway between them. You've got a very pink red, but it's still red. You have a yellow. It's honestly not, like it's a warm yellow, but it's more brown than it is orange. And you've got this very green blue that's still blue enough to do this. So it's an interesting palette. I'll show you the green it makes, because it's nice. It's a nice green. Yeah, so it's not like the strongest green in the world, but it's nice. It really can be quite flexible, while still being a very, very limited palette. I did a lot of stuff with this, and it's just beautiful. I'm gonna let these dry a little bit so we can really appreciate the granulation, and we'll talk about them again in a minute. There we go. So you'll be able to see the texture a little bit better, a little bit of separation. Ultimately, I will be real, I mixed this too much. It looks much better if you leave them a little bit separated so that they're kind of mixing and kind of not, but it's still really, really beautiful. Just a very stormy, textured purple. It would make fantastic like stormy skies. That would be gorgeous. And then this one always makes me think of like the ocean and like kelp. That's really what it makes me think of. And I think it's so beautiful. I've been wanting to paint kelp recently. I should do some of that. But this one, I probably should have added a little bit more Potter's Pink or less water to truly demonstrate it, but you still get a general idea. It's a very lovely, muted pastel kind of situation. Here's the Holbeine Lavender next to the mixes. You can see that this is really just like this and this are really just like watered down ultramarine, but the real difference is ultramarine granulates so heavily it can feel kind of sharp and very textured, and this doesn't granulate in that harsh, sharp way. So if you want the color of very watered down ultramarine without the gritty texture, this is a really good option. And you can even add regular ultramarine to it to get a whole range of ultramarine shades without that heavy granulation, because it really softens that quite a bit. I think it looks really pretty mixed with the emerald, and of course it looks quite nice mixed with pink. It's just very soft, very delicate sort of color. But yeah, this is my entire palette. Alright, I really hope that's in focus, but who knows. So I really hope you enjoyed seeing that more in-depth exploration of my main color palette. I use most of these colors quite regularly, and I hope to use all of them regularly in the future. But it really is a palette that does help me achieve all of my goals in painting. I like to have a lot of control over whether I have granulation or whether I don't. I like to have a full range of colors because I love very intense colors. So even if I use just 2 or 3 colors in a painting, I want to be able to pick any 2 or 3 colors for that painting to achieve my specific goals. I really hope you enjoyed seeing that. If you have any questions about my palette, let me know. I'll try and have all of the colors listed below the video. It's gonna be a long list. But ultimately, I hope you don't take this as sort of like a flex over how many colors I have or whatever. This is more so me sharing something that I find really fascinating, which is the customized palette of the artist. I think that's just such a fascinating thing. I love to see other artists' very custom palettes and see what goes into their work, because sometimes it's very surprising. And I also hope that if you have been looking for a specific color, if you felt like there's this very specific gap and you didn't even know if that color existed, maybe this was helpful. You know, if you were looking for something very specific and you found that 1 or 2 very specific color that you felt like you were missing, then that is also great. But ultimately, I just wanted this to be a fun exploration of color and texture in my watercolor palette. Now, the sketchbook is almost done. I have a few unfinished pages, but ultimately, after that, this is the last page, and it's the one attached to the back. But I do want to do a finish my sketchbook with me video, so I'll probably wait for a sunny day to do that so that you can actually see what I'm doing. But I'm excited to share that with you in the future. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, leave a saucy comment in the comment section below, maybe telling me which of the colors was your absolute favorite or which ones you have and enjoy. Every little comment helps, and I love reading comments and responding to comments, so I hope to see you down there. I hope I'll see you next time, and I really hope you have a fantastic day. Bye.